There we go. All right. Um, okay. Hopefully you can all hear me all right. Hopefully I'm coming through loud and clear. I can see a lot of you are already in the chat. Um, Today's stream's going to be a little bit different. It's not about a leak. I know that's pretty wild to think about. Like a Tharius video that isn't about a leak. That's crazy. I just wanted to talk about something that has kind of been frustrating me for a little bit, like especially yesterday. But we'll get into it in a minute. But let's just read who's in the chat. Obviously, I've seen a couple of you: Scaroium Hunter, Lord Piranha, Lindsay Thomas, Mr. Apples, SM Trules, Non-White Knight, The Emperor Dalek, Paul Shilvok, Christopher Unicorn, Nutter Thomas. That's a great name. Dylan Robertson, DD, Pineapple, Piner on Apple. I hope I'm not saying that right, am I? Crispy Pro. Hello, Crispy. How are you? The K1 fan, Dan23, and I think that's everyone. I think I've gone through everyone so far. And Squinks and Vortex 257. Right, I hope you're all doing alright. This is actually live, Dan23. This isn't a premiere, don't worry. This is actually live. You are actually hearing my voice, right now, in real time. I know, it's technology, it's amazing. I just wanted to talk about something that, it's not just Twitter atomized, but it's something that's been annoying me for quite some time. So obviously, if any of you spend any amount of time on... Oh my god, Terry said my name. Yeah, yeah. So obviously, if any of you spend any time on online in general and talking about Doctor Who, you'll have sort of noticed that it's not always a nice place to be. And obviously, I think if any of you were on Twitter last night, you'll know that there was a lot of stuff going down last night. For those of you not in there, I'm not going to say anyone's names who were involved because I don't want to send them any like unnecessary like questioning or hate or anything because I don't want to bring it all back up. But in fact, we covered the tweet on the last stream. It was a tweet about the ending of Can You Hear Me, and someone rightfully airing their distaste for that scene, saying that it was tone deaf and that they didn't really think it worked that well. And that was just their opinion. Unfortunately, they got sort of harassed. This was on Twitter for that opinion, and it kind of got me thinking more about the state of the fan base in general at the minute, and why I think we really sort of need to start, I guess, how do I put this? We need to start taking some responsibility for the things that like have been going down, because some of the things that have been going down have not been nice. The thing that really got me to think about this was there was a tweet the other day saying that talking about how someone used to be a Doctor Who fan, but due to the sheer toxicity of the discourse around it, they can't talk about it anymore, and they get anxious, and they get traumatic. There's traumatic experience talking about Doctor Who, and this is something that I think needs to be talked about because it's something that it's important to address. And the general response, at least on Twitter, I don't know whether this is the same for Instagram, but I know that, like, obviously Twitter's the one I spend the majority of the time on. Like, there seems to be this tendency to the point where people will just sort of brush it aside and pretend it doesn't exist. They think that obviously if you pretend it doesn't exist, then it just goes away. And unfortunately, that's not the reality of it. I used to think, and this is my sort of new theory for this stream, I used to think that the toxicity, like, you could divide it into two groups, essentially. So you've got the Not My Doctors, who are the sexist portion of the fan base, and the racist portion of the fan base, who basically don't like the era for that reason and are very toxic about the way they go about it. And then on the other side, you've got the toxic positive people who will basically attack you unless you're positive about stuff and will only accept positive views on things. I used to think that was the two. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think the Doctor Who fandom has become a lot more cliquey of late. And what I mean by cliquey is, do you know in the movie Mean Girls, right? You've got all of the different groups of people, and, obviously the girls, they don't like to, in that film, they don't like to admit that there is a clique problem in the school, even though they all know that they've got their own separate cliques that they don't interact with. um, and obviously that don't get along, but they don't. None of them want to admit that that is the case. So they don't. That's basically what the Doctor Who fandom feels like to me at the minute. It feels like a billion different cliques of people, and if someone dare step out of their clique, then they're basically excreted on by everyone around. And it's just not a nice feeling, because you had people saying that the person who expressed the opinion about "Can You Hear Me" was being insensitive, and the thing about that was, not only had said person lost someone to cancer, but was also in themselves socially awkward. So it's he was being the opposite of insensitive. This is one of his own personal experiences, and that's why he struggled with it. I think it's very cliquey. I do think it's very cliquey. I think it's very I think it's very much an us versus them mentality, where it's you've got one sort of way of thinking about things in your clique, and if you step out of that way of thinking, then you're immediately excreted upon by everyone. Because obviously, from what I can tell, anyway, the person in question had been relatively positive on the current era, on their Twitter account in particular. So therefore, they gained an audience of people who were pretty positive about the era too, which is great. Problem being, though, because he then expressed something that he didn't like about the era, he got attacked for it. Because, it was something that didn't fit with that very narrow sort of ideology that they stood for. And I've experienced this myself. Obviously, you guys know I used to be a Not My Doctor. And when as soon as I left, I got attacked, and it just wasn't nice. And it's unfortunately something that's not gone away, but it exists in everything, even smaller things. Even smaller things classic Who versus new Who. There's a massive disconnect between that. It's getting to the point now where people in the general public see Doctor Who fans as whiny, entitled, toxic. That's how people see Doctor Who fans now. And it's because of stuff like this. And I think, obviously, it's one of those things that, people have highlighted. William, who recently did a great video on the two sides of the fandom. But I think it's gotten worse than that. I think it's gotten to the point now where... Because I think part of the thing is, because Doctor Who is so many different things to so many different people, there's inevitably going to be some people who have different ideas of what Doctor Who's meant to be compared to some others. And that in itself isn't an issue. In fact, that's a relatively normal thing. Having different feelings towards stuff is totally normal. That's a totally normal thing to have. What's not normal, though, is attacking the people who have a different definition to Doctor Who than you. That's not normal. It's not a normal way to behave. It's just not. You can, disagree with the person. That's fine. No one's saying you can't disagree with anybody. But to attack them for it, that's not a normal behavior. And I think people need to, realize that they don't get to tell people what they can feel. Just because they like the era doesn't mean they can never be critical of it. But then equally, just because they don't like the era doesn't mean they can never like it. If you watch certain streams out there, and obviously I won't say any names because obviously this isn't that kind of channel, but if you watch certain streams out there from certain people, it's almost like they're afraid to enjoy any part of the current era, because if they do, they just get excreted upon by everyone else around them. That's how it looks. And I just think that it's a very toxic sort of tribal environment, and I just don't think that it creates a very welcoming atmosphere. The problem is, this sort of behaviour is not only forcing long-time fans away, but it's also forcing away potential new fans who may have joined the fan base, but have just seen how toxic it is and just don't want anything to do with it. That's the reality. It's one of those things where people, I think, just need to realise that you know. And there's this weird thing as well where some people are trying to feel morally like superior to others. So what they'll do is they'll say, well, actually, you can't think that way because it's, you know, you're actually like that tweet the other day was a perfect example. People were telling him that he was ableist, that he was all sorts, even though he, you know, those circumstances directly applied to him. Basically, people trying to take the moral high ground over a TV show. It's so dumb. It's really stupid. But like, unfortunately, people people want to feel morally superior to others. I don't get why. I don't understand why people are like this. I don't understand why you can't just, you know, enjoy it or not enjoy it or enjoy the bits that you enjoy or whatever. I just don't understand. Like the thing is, with, you know, I'm someone who really enjoys the Matt Smith era. And I have a lot of banter with a lot of people talking about, oh yeah, you know, he did stuff with Clara and like Nightmare and Silver and stuff with the tight skirt line and stuff, and we have a good bit of banter about that. But some people just cannot take criticism of anything that they like. They just can't do it. And if you express enjoyment of something, but then criticize it at the same time, it's almost like criticisms now have to be very surface level. They can't challenge people in any way, because if they do, then you're stepping out of your sort of ideological line. You know, you've got to stay where you are. You cannot move. You must love. If you say you love something on social media, you must love every aspect of it. You can't ever criticize it at all. If you say you hate something, that is your opinion. You cannot enjoy any of it, and your opinion cannot change forever. That is how it's got to at this point. And I just think that, like, that's not how humans work. Humans are very, you know, we're very complex creatures. Our thoughts and our feelings, they change all the time. So when you treat humans as though they don't, I think it's just you're missing a lot of you know, just fundamental parts of being human. Like our opinions and thoughts changing is a natural part of being a human at the end of the day. And I don't get why now that's not being seen as something that's okay. Like, now we can't change our opinions. Like, I've had people call me inconsistent for obviously being the way I was a few years ago. But I always say to those people, you know, opinions are allowed to change over time. You don't just have to keep the one thing. You know, I talk to plenty of people who like the current era. Plenty of people. But at the end of the day, you know, it doesn't become toxic. I don't get why the whole fan base can't just be like that. I don't get why the whole fan base just can't not just get along, but just like accept that not everyone feels the way that you do. It's just so petty, I think, and I think it's gone way beyond just not my doctors and toxic positive. I think it's transcended that, and it's just become this. It's almost like an every man for himself thing, where everyone feels really defensive of their own opinion constantly, and it's just a very hostile. Just a very hostile environment, I find. Someone said there, I've stopped using social media. It's a much calmer, just ignoring everyone else. And yeah, that's true. But the problem is, you shouldn't be made to do that. That's the problem. It shouldn't be getting to a point where you have to stop using it because of the toxicity there. That's the problem. And unfortunately, it's gotten to a point now where many people are forced off social media because they just can't deal with the toxicity of it all. And I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's fair on the people who, you know, obviously are being forced off, but I don't think it's fair on the people who are currently in, because if the more people you force offline, the less anyone can actually interact with each other. You're basically neglecting people of having new interactions with different people. It's bizarre to me, and it's just one of those. And like, there was this thing, I don't know what happened, but obviously I mentioned the "can you hear me" thing, but there was this thing about Dalek Universe. I don't know what that was about. If someone in chat could let me know. But like, there was some drama over the new Big Finish, and I'm just like, it's a new Big Finish. You know what I mean? It's just, how is that so drama worthy? I don't understand. Someone asked me, would you say it's worse than the discourse around Star Wars? Yeah, I would actually, and I'll say why. At least with Star Wars, generally, there's parts that everyone can agree on that's good. For instance, I feel like, most Star Wars fans, they like the original trilogy. Like, where, there'll be people who like the prequels, there'll be people who like the sequels. But as well, I think because Doctor Who's been so many different things, it spawned so many different views on what Doctor Who is. And again, on its own, that's not a bad thing. But what is when your idea of what Doctor Who is doesn't fit with someone else's, and therefore you think it's right to correct them. Because, there are people who believe that you can't be a Doctor Who fan unless you watch classic, and I just think, what an elitist way to think. Imagine being brought up on Doctor Who in 2005 and watching it from 2005 to now. You've been watching it for 20 years. You've been watching it for 20 years by this point, and you just get told by someone that you're not a real fan because you didn't start with the classic stuff. I just don't think that's a right way to think, and I think that sort of stuff is the stuff that is coming across as elitist. And then on top of that, you've got all of the, the stans who are, obviously they don't take criticism of anything very well at all. And it's just so bizarre to me. And it's just, it's really strange. And then you've got people who, and then, like, politics will be thrown into it, and things like that. And it's just bizarre to me, like, why it's something like this. Doctor Who is far worse than Star Wars. I agree. And it shouldn't be, because the thing is, up until about, I think maybe 2013 or 2014, like, this fan base was relatively chill. It just seems to be that in the last few years, it's all just gone to pot. And I don't know what's happened, but human decency and just common decency just seems to have gone out the window in the fan base. And it's just a bit depressing. Because you can't even have a friendly debate anymore without it devolving into a slagging match. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And some people will attribute that to being a New Era thing. But quite honestly, I think no matter what changes the New Era made, it was going to happen. Because we just... because I think it was starting to happen in the Capaldi era anyway. So a lot of people will attribute it to the New Era, but I think it was something that happened long before Jodie Whittaker came on the scene. That was just the thing that I guess caused a lot of, divided people somewhat. But I think, that's not something that is... I don't think that's the culprit, is what I'm trying to get at. You can watch only an episode and say you're a Doctor Who fan. You're equally as much of a fan as anyone else. Yeah, this is the thing that people don't seem to get. How do you quantify being more or less of a fan of something? You can't, because it's just such a nebulous concept. It's just such a nebulous concept. Like, how can you quantify loving something more than somebody else? Love isn't a quantifiable thing. It's something that, you have for something, and that's it. It's not something that, can be measured. You either love something or you don't. It's not a competition. I just don't... It baffles me. I think some people, they seek validation for how they feel. They seek a way to fit in with people. And I've been in that position as well. But unfortunately... And on its own, again, finding somewhere to be comfortable and talk about what you like is great. But then going immediately against someone who feels differently to you, that's not a great thing. That's a very bad thing. It's just about loving the Doctor. Exactly, but that's the thing. The Doctor would not condone this. The Doctor would not condone you going after people because they feel differently to you. That's completely the antithesis of what the Doctor has ever stood for. And I think people need to remember that. Like, it's honestly just baffling. Like, for a show that has always preached tolerance and unity and just being a kind and nice person. It's baffling to me that it's got one of the most toxic fan bases in all of fiction right now, and it does, and I'm not afraid to say that. I think it genuinely does have one of the most toxic fan bases to ever, at the moment. And like, people will say, oh, maybe it'll get better once Jodie leaves. I honestly don't think it will, because the next thing will come along and the whole thing will just start all over again, and it'll just be a never-ending cycle of constant bashing and ridiculing and just constant nastiness. And someone said it's Star Wars. I don't agree, because I think Star Wars, there is at least some things that everyone agrees on with that. Yeah, they're toxic as well, but at the same time, like, I think the Doctor Who fan base is way more divided. People will go after me for being, for talking about leaks, and yet you've got people being so vile and mean to the point where they're being driven offline, and yet I'm the one who's somehow taking it too far by talking about leaks. Really? That's what you're going to get upset about? You're not going to get upset about the people who are literally being forced offline due to the way people are talking to them? It's ridiculous. It's absolutely bizarre. And there was someone the other day who said they did a thread saying that Martha Jones gave them Tory energy. And a lot of people didn't agree with that. I even made a joke about it. But that same person was getting sent death threats. They were getting sent death threats over expressing an opinion over a fictional character online. Think about that. Just think about that for a second. A fictional character, not a real person, a fictional character of Martha Jones. They expressed an opinion that didn't fit with the wide majority, and as a result, they got told to kill themselves. Is that the sort of thing that we want to be promoting? Is that the sort of thing that we want this community and this fan base to represent? It's not just an issue with 13. Like, that's the thing. I get, 12 stans, 12 Doctor mega fans or stans, they're very toxic. They're very, very toxic. I think because the Capaldi era wasn't that well regarded when it came out by the vast majority, especially like general public fans, was a different matter, but general public didn't vibe with the Capaldi era. They just didn't. That was the whole reason for the big reboot with the Chibnall era. That was the whole thinking behind it. So, as a result, these people feel very protective over the Capaldi era, which is fair enough. But, I'll tell you a story that I had fairly recently. This was a couple months ago. I was on Twitter, and I saw an account say, you don't like the Capaldi era because you're critical. You just don't like it because you don't like it. You don't like the Capaldi era because you think the writing's bad. You just don't like it because you don't like it. So then I, in a quite a sarcastic, way, I didn't really mean much by it. I just said, I just listed a couple of the episodes that I think were badly written. And as a result of that, I got completely attacked. And no one defended me because they didn't want to. And there were some people, there was a couple of people who did, but the vast majority were just quite happy for this person to have a go at me, even though all I did was respond to someone's deliberately argumentative stance. That's all I did, and yet I was the one who was somehow in the wrong. William, who just said there, what do you think is the best solution? It seems everywhere now, and you can't say anything on Twitter without someone saying something. Honestly, it's gotten to a point now where I genuinely don't know what the solution is. I used to just think it was a case of, getting a grip and realising that people have different opinions, but I just don't think people are capable of that anymore. It's baffling to me. I can't even say what the right solution is because I just don't know these days. I guess the only thing I would say is just listen to... I think my best solution would be, if you don't, listen to people with other opinions that you might not normally listen to or agree with, because I think the only way that we make people more tolerant of other opinions if we get them more used to the idea of listening to them. If people listen to more people's opinions, they may be more understanding of them, whereas right now I think everyone likes putting themselves in little echo chambers where they hear the exact things they want to hear repeated on a loop constantly. And I don't think that's a healthy mindset to be in. I think you need that difference in opinion. I think you need that sort of that experience of having these different like arguments and listening to them and forming your own opinion, because that's the thing. I think some of these people, they don't even form their own opinions. They'll just copy whatever the mob is saying, and they'll just parrot it, and it's not a healthy mindset at all. It's so yeah, that's what I would say. I would say listen to other opinions. Obviously, there are some opinions out there that just are not appropriate. Like sexism and racism and stuff isn't appropriate. But if someone's, if you say, for example, you love 12, you adore 12 to the nth degree, you won't hear a bad word said about him, and if if you do, you go really defensive. Maybe listen to a couple of people who aren't big fans of 12, so you can gain a better understanding of their point of view, and then go, okay, well, I don't agree, but I understand where they're coming from. That's what it should be. So yeah, that's what I would do. I'd say 80% on Twitter and respectful, but it's sadly that very loud 20% minority. The problem is as well is that the minority is very loud. But then I don't even think it's just Twitter, because like YouTube, I've had to block people who've been toxic, more so than I've ever had to on this channel before. And part of that could be due to the fact that the channel's growing, which is great, obviously, and that's fantastic, and I'm really thankful for that. But, I think part of it also comes down to just how toxic the community's gone. You can't say anything without people, at least one person, taking an issue with it. And I just think that it's getting incredibly ridiculous now and incredibly toxic. It's baffling to me. I think people need to realize as well is that just because they hold a certain opinion on a TV show, it doesn't make them any better than anyone else. I talked a bit earlier about people trying to act like they're morally superior to others. But, you're not. Just because you like something doesn't make you any better than anyone else. It doesn't. It just doesn't. Like, people try and think that they're above certain people because they like the current era. No, you're not. You're not above anyone because you like something. You're just the same as the rest of us. And obviously, I'm friends with people like Tom Vance, who runs Nut My Doctor. And Nut My Doctor does highlight some people that I do think need to be highlighted and talked about, which is fair enough. But what I do think that sort of account and things like that do contribute towards is this sort of vibe of, if you like the current era, you're the good one. And if you don't like the current era, you're the bad one. So I think it makes people who think that way feel like validated in a way. I hope that's making sense. I'm not trying to go after Nut My Doctor, sorry. I'm just trying to say that I think that those sorts of things can contribute to people thinking that they're better than others. Someone said there, the Who Addicts were the best example. Exactly, the Who Addicts. I can tell you the story about the Who Addicts. Obviously, I've mentioned this before. They had to stop reviewing current era episodes just due to the sheer toxicity of it. A channel that's been going since, I want to say, like, 2013, 2012? Maybe 2011 even. Very, very long time. Maybe 10 years now. They've been going and they've been doing these reviews. That's how long they've been going. They've had to stop doing current era reviews due to the sheer toxicity of the fan base. If that's not the best indicator of how bad it's gotten now, to the point where someone who's withstood the fan base for 10 years now has to quit, then I don't know what else to tell you, because I think that, to me, is the perfect example of the issues with the fandom right now. I don't care what your morals are. If you send death threats and abuse, you're just as bad as NMDs. Exactly. I said this on Twitter the other day. I don't care whether you're for the current era, whether you're against the current era, or anywhere in between. If you're toxic, and you give someone a toxic experience in the Doctor Who fanbase, that reflects badly on all of us. I don't, because what do people do then? They have bad experiences in the community. They don't go, oh, that must just be one person. No. They go, oh, the Doctor Who fanbase. Oh, I had a really toxic experience with them. They're really toxic. So when, even if you think that your actions won't have any lasting consequences, they will. because that potential person who might have been a fan will now go tell their friends, don't get involved in Doctor Who, bunch of toxic people, don't bother. That's what happens. And it's not even about your opinion at this point, because it's, as I said, it's transcended the point where your opinion on Doctor Who even matters anymore. It's more just about, I'm not saying not people's opinions don't matter, but more so just, regardless of what your opinion is, being toxic just isn't okay. It doesn't even matter at this point. So NMD's Adrian Gaming are not my doctors. They're like the term coined to describe the people who don't like the current era, who are very extreme, toxic, potentially sexist and racist about it as well. That's how they are described in the fan base. I think the problem is that it's not the people are trying to find the problem. They're trying to find a reason why they're not the problem. Exactly. This ties back into the thing I was talking about earlier, where people will just, what they'll do when a bad thing happens is they'll just cover it up with things about being positive. And I don't think that's the right solution. I think by doing that, you're negating and neglecting the fact that these things do exist and are a big issue. When what you should be doing is confronting these people and saying, no, I don't think what you're doing is appropriate. But what the people do instead is they just sort of pretend that it doesn't exist. And I don't think that helps. So the thing is, as I said, it's not even about your opinion on Doctor Who. It's just about being a decent human being. Like, regardless of what your opinion is. You know, I've had people, you know, you can be gotten after by every group now, because it's not just, people like to say that it's just one or two groups. It's not really. It's everyone. Because I've had people come after me for not liking the current era. I've had people come after me for liking the current era too much. I've had people come after me for not liking the Capaldi era enough. I've had people come after me for liking the Matt Smith era too much. I've had people come after me for not getting into Big Finish enough. Which, by the way, for me, myself, you know, Big Finish, I've just not got a great attention span, I'll be honest. I struggle a bit with it. I've listened to a few, but it's just not my preferred form of entertainment. You know, it's just not for me. But, like, people will make you feel bad for not enjoying it, and it's just like, well, no. And then there'll be the people who won't be able to listen to Big Finish, but then they'll also be lumped in with people who just don't, you know, even people who like Big Finish are getting toxic now. It's ridiculous. Like, you know, some people just can't listen to Big Finish for whatever reason, whether they've got a disability or whatever. You know, Big Finish isn't something that's easily accessible to them. So what do you do in response? You definitely don't try and say that they're the problem. See Unique. Ooh, have I gone a bit pixely? I've just seen that in the corner. Do I look alright? Hopefully I still look okay. It's saying excellent condition on my end, so hopefully it's not too bad. The Times Child is what makes some fan away from the show. I don't even think it's that, though, because, yes, that was a controversial thing, but realistically, if it wasn't the Timeless Child, it was going to be something else. If it wasn't that, it would have been, I don't know, it would have been any other future plotline that would come along. There was always going to be something that was inevitably going to rile the fan base up, because that is inevitable to happen. But unfortunately, like, people just can't get along, and I just don't understand. I don't get it. Like, yeah, hello, Clacker the Geek. I hope I'm making sense here, and I hope people sort of understand where I'm coming from with this. I hope I'm not the only one who feels this way. I just think it's getting extremely toxic and ridiculous now. One of my favourite classic Doctor Who episodes is considered underrated, so I get a negative comment when I say it's one of my favourites. Exactly. Even little things like that. You know, talking about what classic Who story is your favourite. Even tiny little things like that, you know, are things now that can cause massive controversy. And, like, since when was that something that was controversial? or even acceptable to go after someone for their opinion on a story. I just don't think it's acceptable at all. To that person in the chat who's mentioning YouTubers' names, all I'll say is one of those YouTubers in question literally posted one Reddit post as a joke, and then the other person proceeded to say that they should be ashamed of themselves. I don't think the person writing the Reddit post is in the wrong in that situation, but if you do, fair enough, I can't stop you with that. But all I will say is, people should be allowed to make jokes without it being, a massive controversy. It comes back to what I was saying earlier about, this fan base and people just not being able to say anything without being attacked. In terms of the fan base size, it's possible the fan base has done more damage to itself than the new era. I can't be sure though. I agree. I think the biggest issue we're going to face now going forwards is going to be the fan base. Because, even if, we get an era of the show, I don't, look, I think even if we get an era of the show that's great, I think there'll always be some group of people who will just, there'll be groups of people who'll just still constantly be at each other's throats, even if the show is quote-unquote good, whatever that means. Because it's different, obviously, to everyone. It's a completely subjective thing. I think you'll always have people who just go after each other. So that's a difficult one, because because I think people think that once this era is over, then it'll go back to normal. I don't think it will. I think we've sort of passed the point of that now. Strange Folk says, to me it contributes to the fact that a lot of outspoken toxic aspects of fandom are at a young age, and they tie in their views on the show to their greater identity. Yeah, that's the problem, and I think that's what happens with particularly some stands as well. Not all of them. I'm not going to say that all stands do this, but I feel like some stands feel so adamantly about something that when it's criticised, they take it as some sort of personal attack. And that's not what it is. It's just people expressing their different views, and that's a fine, healthy, and normal thing to do. And I think that should be normalised. I got a huge amount of backlash for praising a white man when I was talking about, but I was making a point that all older men comedians have been great in the show as companions. Therefore, I was excited for Dan. Exactly. And that whole controversy over Dan, over John Bishop, that was ridiculous. And that stuff was just as bad as the Not My Doctors, as we call them. That stuff was just as bad. Definitely, it was just as bad. But unfortunately, I mean, for some people, it doesn't get hold on the same degree. I'm glad nowadays that, toxic positivity and Not My Doctors are sort of held in the same low regard. But I think it's, as I said earlier in the stream, I think it's transcended that. I think any opinion is like everyone has their own cliques now, and I say both. But you get what I mean. They've all got their own little groups, and if anyone steps out of line with the group, they get attacked. That's what I think, and that's genuinely how I feel, and that's why, I personally am very vocal about why I changed my opinion somewhat over time, because I want to normalize the idea that opinions and people are allowed to change, and that's a normal thing that shouldn't be vilified. It's not being inconsistent, it's called being a human. Sometimes I disagree a lot on an opinion, but I don't want to go and comment on it like any normal person. But yeah, that's the thing. Sometimes I don't get, obviously, sometimes people do get provoked, and, they do feel the need to respond, which is fine. But, sometimes just leave it, I just don't, some things just aren't worth bothering with, I guess. I don't see why you bother with certain things, It's like the John Bishop situation. People took it way too far and started bringing his skin colour into it. You can be disappointed, but they shouldn't have started the abuse towards him. Exactly. It wasn't his fault that you weren't getting a Series 13 with the Doctor and Yaz. That's not his fault. You know, if you wanted that, the BBC would be the right people to complain to. That's the people who you should be complaining to. John Bishop did nothing wrong. You know, what? So why is the attack going towards him? It's the same way I feel about Jodie to a certain extent. A lot of hate goes towards Jodie, but when realistically, you know, she's an actress. She's not really doing much. She's just doing her job. You know. Hello, Aura Studios, man. I just punched myself in the eye and it feels weird. I hope you're okay. But yeah, the thing is with the internet would be so much better if we didn't have to engage with everything. I might see a post and think it's dumb, but you know what? I don't comment. Yeah, that's what I've started doing now. You may notice that, like, if you follow me on Twitter, which I haven't really advertised very well because most of my, you know, frustration recently has just been coming from Twitter. But, you know, if you go on my Twitter, like, I've been engaging a lot less with, like, you know, what they call bait posts. And I've been doing a lot less because I used to do it just for a bit of a laugh, but then I realised that, oh, this is, like, just causing more stuff than it's actually benefiting. So I stopped doing them because it's just, and I stopped engaging with them because it's just not worth the hassle. And, you know, at this point, I've been happier for it, but what gets to me is when people get attacked who I know who don't deserve it. That's, I think, what gets to me, because as a person, I'm very protective of people. If I'm friends with somebody and they get attacked, I say something, because that's just the way I am as a person. I'm very protective. You know, even though I can't do a lot physically, I think as a result, I've always been a lot more sort of, you know, I've used my words a lot more in order to sort of defend myself, and I'll do that for anybody. I always have and always will. So it's unfortunately at this point, it's not just as simple as logging off. I wish it was, but I can't stand the idea of people getting attacked. And I'm not saying that people can't fight their own, you know, battles. People are perfectly able to do that. But I just like to help wherever I can, you know, I just think that it shouldn't have to get to a point where you have to come off Twitter. It shouldn't have to get to a point where you have to come off social media or even online in general because of how toxic it is. You shouldn't have to get to that point, you know? I feel entitlement is also a factor. Yeah, I agree. When the show means a lot to you, your reactions may be more visceral than others. And with certain fans, this has led to a toxic community within the fan base. I agree. I think at the end of the day, you know, I love this show. I absolutely, like, it's part of the reason that I do what I do. You know, it's a big part of the reason that I do what I do today. It's a big part of the reason that I've got, like, 88 people watching me right now, which is insane. And it's an insane number of people to have watching you live. This is you know, Doctor Who is the reason for that. But at the same time, as much as I may not like things, I don't feel entitled to the show to cater exactly to me. Because at the end of the day, it's not just for me. You know, there's millions of other people who watch it. You know, imagine if, right, the BBC listened to every individual request from fans, you know, online. Everyone. Imagine if it listened to all of them and implemented it into the next series of the show. Chances are that series would be shit. That series would probably be awful. Because, you know, at the end of the day, as much as we all think that our vision of Doctor Who is the best, if you try and make everyone happy, you end up making nobody happy. I got told I still couldn't accept that David Tennant had left just because I didn't like the current era. Yeah, exactly. Like, you know, I think people need to realise that with the current era is, you know, I'm one of these people who thinks, I'm of the opinion that Doctor Who needs to evolve. So the last thing that I consider myself to be is someone who wants it to go constantly back to the way it was. But at the same time, I think there are right ways and wrong ways to evolve, but that's like my personal opinion. But some people really like the way that Doctor Who's evolving at the minute, and power to those people. But that's fine, you know, people should be allowed to enjoy and not enjoy whatever they want, is what I'm getting at. Yeah, but not liking the Timeless Child isn't a minority opinion. It doesn't matter, though. It doesn't matter. Like, if you don't like the Timeless Child, that's fine, fair enough. I don't. But at the end of the day, it's not necessary to attack the people who do. It's just not necessary. And that goes the reverse. If you like the Timeless Child, it's not unnecessary to go after the people you don't. It's just not needed. The Doctor Who is the. I'm right. Yeah, no, it's. I was trying to think of. I was trying to read someone's thing, but it kept scrolling up. Like, the chat's going so quickly these days. It's awesome. It's awesome to see. If you haven't already, please do give the stream a bit of a like if you could. I'd appreciate it. We're all different people. Yeah, this is. I tweeted this the other day, I think, or I put like a I put like a tweet when I did a tweet thread talking about how my opinions had changed. I put at the end the quote from the 11th Doctor: "We're all different people all through our lives, and that's okay. That's good. You've got to keep moving so long as you remember all the people that you used to be." That is exactly what the 11th Doctor said in his final speech, and I think it's so relevant now. I think it's more relevant now than it probably was when it came out, because people's opinions are allowed to change and evolve and be more nuanced than just, I like this, or I don't like this. There's more to people than just that. Than just that one opinion. Like, we're not just... I think people have a tendency to make human beings sound less complex than they actually are. The unrelenting desire for people to love this era is quite staggering. Yeah, I've said, if you love the era, that's great. But I think trying to force it onto others, and I think trying to find any way you can, because I think that's why the toxicity around the whole John Bishop thing got so bad, is that they so desperately wanted Yaz to get some focus, because they really wanted to like it, that when they found out that wasn't happening, they got really, really upset. And that's the problem, really. But yeah. Another disgusting thing, I think, is the latest drama has highlighted is the assumption to paint those of marginalised groups of bigotry when trying to gain the moral high ground. Yeah, that's what I spoke about earlier. People will try and gain the moral high ground with people, and that shouldn't even factor in. I don't get why that would even be something that would matter. Like, I've said this before, being, like, no, you're not morally high. You're not morally higher than anyone else if you like something. You're not. I'm sorry, this may be a shock to everyone, but if you liked, say for example, in the recent drama, that scene in Can You Hear Me, if you liked that, fine, cool, good for you. It doesn't mean that you're any better than anyone else. I know that might be a hard concept for some people to get, but it's true. You're not any better than anyone else for liking that. I think some people think that they are. And I think, unfortunately, it does get validated by certain people, even if unintentionally. And I think that's a major issue. Man, Theories tweets a lot. I mean, I've tried to be tweeting less recently. But at the end of the day, as I said, I feel very defensive of people. So when people go after people, I feel the need to say something. And that's basically what this stream was born out of. It was born out of a desire. Because I now have about, in terms of like live streams, I'll have about 90 to 100 people who watch me like live. And that's great. That's awesome. But I thought that I'd be dumb if I didn't at least try and use it to raise awareness about something that I felt passionately about. Because at the end of the day, it's called YouTube, isn't it? It's YouTube. It's the things that you feel passionately about. And I feel really passionately about what's going on in the fan base right now. And I feel like it needs to be highlighted more, if that makes sense. I feel like people need to say, Septex, who is Starius, someone who's fastly approaching Septex's sub count now. I'm just kidding. Love you, Septex. Hey, Ambient, as well. How are you doing? Big fan. Twitter is a garbage platform all around. Yeah, but like I guess my point just is that like it shouldn't get that. I guess it shouldn't have that like if we all acted a bit more nice as people and just decent people, that it wouldn't have to get that reputation. Yeah, and Dahlia, you've just pointed out something as well, like, some people think they're better for not liking the 13th Doctor's era. There's this term that gets thrown around, like, when people call themselves real fans. That's what they call themselves. They call themselves real fans. No one's a real fan of anything. You're just a fan. If you like something, great. If you don't. Why is it got to be a competition? I don't understand. I feel like the biggest issue with the Tiles Child isn't necessarily the lore, but more the way it's been told. Yeah, my issue more is what it does to the Doctor as a character. But like, there are plenty, as I said, there's plenty of people who enjoy what it's done to the Doctor as a character, and power to those people. But don't force that opinion onto other people is what this whole sort of argument's about. Do you think the rise of politicization of the fandom has come from the show becoming more political? I don't even know, because I think the world's been getting more political anyway. So Doctor Who was always going to follow suit, but Doctor Who's always been political. I think the problem now is that, like, I guess just, I think, for me, and this is just my opinion, like, as long as the story's good, I don't really care what the politics, obviously, as long as they're not pushing anything harmful, you know. If it's, you know, one of my favourite stories is the Happiness Patrol from the Sylvester McCoy years, and that's a very politically charged story. It's meant to be a satire of Thatcherism. That's the whole idea. But, you know, so I don't think it's become more political necessarily. I just think the culture of in which it exists has become more political. Not necessarily that the show has become more political, but I just think culture itself has become more political. Because if you think about it, like, I never used to watch the news up until a few years ago. Because, you know, why would I? Why would I bother? You know, like, it was only sort of in a post sort of Brexit time that I started actually actively listening to the news. So the world has gotten more political, and people are more in tune with what's going on politically in the world. And that has benefits and drawbacks. Yeah, Jack Wolf, got a lot of Jack Wolf fans in the chat. I love Jack Wolf. Jack Wolf's great. Hello, I loathe the term real fan, and an even worse, true fan. Frankly, I avoid fandom and just watch the show when I can be asked. Yeah, I'm in the same boat, honestly. I hate the terms true fan and real fan, because it comes back to that idea of the Doctor Who fandom being an elitist place, which a lot of members of the general public, I've heard people say, they think it's an elitist thing. Twitter, Doctor Who was never political. Me looks awkwardly at them watching the Happiness Patrol. Yeah, it's always been political. Yeah, the thing is about today is I was talking about this to Confused Adipose today. We were talking about this politics in the Chibnall era. When people complain about the Chibnall era being too political, do you remember in, like, Spyfall Part 2, when the Doctor is in, what is it, like, Nazi-occupied France, and Sacha Dhawan, who's playing the Master, is obviously a man of colour, a person of colour, playing the Master, and he's in Nazi uniform. And obviously the Doctor goes, oh, you're not exactly the Aryan archetype, and he explains that he's got a perception filter on, so that the Nazis don't, you know, suss on that he's actually not meant to be with them. So what does the Doctor do? She short circuits his perception filter, making him appear as, you know, himself, so that he gets captured and sent to concentration camps. That by no means is politically correct. I think, I was talking about this to Confused Adipose today. I think Chibnall wants to be diverse and he wants to be inclusive, but he didn't really stop and think about the potential stereotypes he was you know, unintentionally putting on these characters. Because thinking about it, you know, the Doctor, the Jo Martin, the first woman of colour to ever play the role of the Doctor, her first scene is her carrying a gun around. You know, Ryan's whole arc for Series 12, you know, a male person of colour, he throws a basketball. Do you see what I'm trying to say? It's trying to be politically correct, but I think actually it's less good politically than something like the Capaldi era is. Do you think this is an inevitability of fandom? We have so many people with different views. Potentially. But again, I think the Doctor Who fandom's always had, like, really diverse views, because the show, by its very nature, has been so many different things at so many different points in time, that I think it's inevitable that people will have different opinions on the show. That is an inevitability. But I think what's happening now is that, like, you know, because social media existed, I guess you could make the argument that now because people can share it online, that might not be helping. But I think, maybe you are right. Maybe it is just, an inevitability. But I think there are some fan bases that just aren't like this, Um, I don't know, and there are a lot that are like this, but I feel like, you know, there are some that are way better at it than this fandom is. In January, I did a podcast on the fandom. Your toxic positivity video partially inspired me to do it. Wait, I'm going to scroll up because it's going too quick now. Wait, what was this? I'm trying to get to that now. I, a teen, can grasp the concept of an opinion. Then why can't grown adults? Exactly, that's the thing that baffles me as well. Is that sometimes the most, the most immature people are the oldest. And that's not always the case. I'm not saying it always is. But there are some people who, are the least mature and are the oldest people. And I think part of it comes down to, as well, I think prior to 2005, I think Doctor Who, especially in like the 80s, was more of a niche thing. Especially prior to its big revival, you had the Virgin New Adventures. And while, yes, it did still have a big audience, it's nowhere near the size of it that it is now. So I think some people, some of the older fans, and I'm not saying this is all people, but I'm just saying, like, some older fans feel this sense of loss because this little thing that they found, that they saw as their thing, is now being enjoyed by, millions of people across the world, and they don't feel they don't feel it's as special anymore because it's not something that they just enjoy. If that makes sense. It's kind of that sort of same thing that happens with a lot of small things before they become big. People will feel like, oh, I was here first, type thing. And I think that's what leads to some sort of elitism with people. I just wish fans can understand that other fans have different opinions to them. I don't care what element of the show someone dislikes, good for them. And I'll like what I like. Exactly. I don't get what's so hard to understand about that either. Like, at the end of the day, if you like something, great. If you don't, that's also great. Like, where's the issue? I just don't understand. I think people are making this more complicated than it needs to be. It's probably important to remember that some YouTubers will be doing it for the money. And yeah, you know what? Like, the thing about that is that the thing about the people who do it for the money is that, unfortunately, because their audiences are so big, they do generate a lot of negativity. But at the same time, at least they are getting something out of it. I almost have a certain, not respect's the wrong word, but at least, they're gaining from it. Some people just want to be assholes to be assholes, and they don't even get anything out of it, and I think that's probably maybe worse. I don't know. Oh god, we just had, for a split second we had 100 viewers there, which was my goal for this stream, so thank you all for that, to break 100 viewers, which is pretty cool. But yeah, what was I saying? If this was early Moffat with the same level of blatancy, I don't think it would be the same level of response. I don't think it would be still be the same level of response since people weren't looking for it then. Yeah, exactly. I think some people actively want to get into arguments now, and it's kind of, not whatever floats your boat, because it makes a toxic environment for everyone else. But, like, is that really the best way you could be spending your time, is to just start arguments with people? Like, is that, the thing you want to be spending your days doing? I mean, if it is, I can't really stop you, but, like, okay. I suppose the issue is that people enjoying bad writing, which just solidifies the idea in making a show with bad writing. So it's gradually just getting worse, I guess. But then at the same time, like, if people enjoy something that's, got bad writing in it, that's not really their fault. And you shouldn't take it out on them. It should be, the writers that you direct your attention to that you don't like, more so than the people who are enjoying it, I suppose. Thank you, Nathan. Yeah, we just had about 100 people in here live, which was my big goal for like one of these streams, because we've been on the precipice of 100 viewers for about I think the last two streams, like last one we had like 92 viewers at peak, and in today's one we've had about and in the day one before that we had like 94. So it's been sort of teetering on the brink of 100 viewers for a while. So to finally get to that point was really cool. Thank you, Tasha M. I suspect it'll help that there are so many people stuck indoors with little interaction. Yeah, maybe it'll get better when people start going outside a bit more. But I don't know, I just think this whole thing is getting worse. Yeah, and I said Gregor White, that was completely unacceptable. Like, that's just as unacceptable as anything else. BB Props, I'm an older fan. Watched since the 70s. I've never taken ownership of it. Exactly, and that's the right way to be. That's the right way to be. Don't, you know, at the end of the day, I've been a fan for about 10 years. I've been a fan since, like, 2008. So it's been, like, what, 12 odd years I've been watching the show now, on and off. But at the end of the day, if I see someone who's been watching the show for a year, or 2 years, or 3 years, I don't go, well, I'm more of a fan of you, actually. Because it's just not the case, you know? That's not the case at all. You know, no one's more or less of a fan than anyone else. And I think anyone who thinks that is stupid, quite frankly. And I think that's a stupid, dumb way to think. Will they have the Doctor's Master in Series 14 for the 14th Doctor? No idea. No idea about anything. No, I've got no clue. BBC America gets some exclusive content that the UK doesn't. I mean, apparently. I don't know what they get, but yeah, probably. Yeah, so basically the whole point of this stream is just to say the fan base is kind of toxic right now, and I think people need to sort of calm down. You're still in college. I mean, I deliberately delayed the stream slightly because I knew that because I know that some people are still off for Easter, and I know that some people are not off for Easter. So I was like, if I make this, you know, about 2:30 to 3 sort of start time, then I'll get more people in. But like, apparently some people are still in college and school and stuff, so I apologize for that. But hopefully, you know, you can kind of catch the stream afterwards, because obviously these streams are immediately accessible as soon as they go off air. Yes, this is live. This is live at Unofficial Who. I don't watch. If you limit the show to the OGs, then you don't get high budget. You get cheap. Yeah. Yeah, the aim with Doctor Who should always be to get, like, as many, because it's a family show, the idea you want is to get to as many people as possible. And that's why the RTD era works so well, is because it appealed to everyone. Like, that was the idea, and it worked. And now some people said that, oh, they didn't like it because, you know, it wasn't, it was too, I guess commercialized would be the word. It's too commercialized, it's too mass market. But at the end of the day, that's the reason that was successful. And I think if you want your favourite thing to be successful in a modern climate, you are going to have to accept that eventually, at some point in time, it's going to have to change. And I've had to accept that, like, you know, it couldn't just carry on being, because I love the Matt Smith era, but it couldn't carry on being that, because it was obvious that it needed a shake-up at the end of Capaldi's era. See you later, Stephen O.D., or Steve O.D., sorry about that. Hi, sorry, I couldn't arrive earlier, just finished secondary school. So to recap what's going on, I'm basically just talking about the toxicity in the fandom, and why it's kind of dumb and people need to calm down, basically. If I'm a fan who, let's just say, discovered the series through series 12, I'd be happy they still have so much to watch. Exactly, like, yeah, exactly. Like, I think that if anything, if you find somebody, because Doctor Who fans, as much as we are a big collective, you know, we're still a relatively niche collective these days. We're a pretty niche collective these days. Like, I don't hear a lot of people talking about Doctor Who anymore, like I did in, like, maybe like the 10 and early Smith years. But, you know, so why would you want to actively prevent new people from joining? If anything, you want as many people as possible. Yeah, so why would you want to, if you don't like the current stuff, that's fine, but, like, if someone's really enjoying it, then why would you try and wreck that for them? critique it till the cows come home. I do it all the time. Ambient Studios just said there about, you know, people not liking the way the show's going, even doctors not liking the way the show's going. And, that's fair enough. But at the end of the day, they're not going, you're bad for enjoying this, because that's just not a normal thing to do. That's not a healthy thing to do. That's not what you should do. I use OBS to stream. Tom's high. Do you think Davros will make a return? Yeah, probably. If I had to guess, it would probably be like the third Dalek special, I would assume. Yeah, I think he will. Tom, you're less of a fan than me because I've been a fan for so long. I don't remember when I started watching, but you remember when you did. Exactly. See how ridiculous that sounds. And Angry Fast Mystery did a great parody of it there. Like, see how ridiculous that sounds as a concept. But that's what these people say. It baffles me. I'm trying to scroll up a bit. I'm just glad the Paradigm Daleks are gone. I didn't even mind the Paradigm Daleks, to be fair. I'm one of these people who think that they had potential. The Doctor will regenerate its twins. Oh, wouldn't that be a twist? Davros being back would be cool, but I feel like they need to change him a lot. I think the thing with Davros is, like, they've done so much with him at this point that I don't really know. It's kind of like the Master. Like, what do you do now with the Master now that it's sort of, over? Like, I don't really know what you do with the Master now, because, like, you've sort of done the whole him being redeemed thing, or her being redeemed thing, in the case of Missy. So where do you logically take the character next? We were just on 104 then, and I was going to take a screenshot, but unfortunately we went back down, so I couldn't take the screenshot quickly enough. I'm worried that when Jay's video eventually comes out, there'll be another massive Twitter war. Yeah, probably, because I know that JXE drummed up some controversy for talking about, I think, the same thing, and Can You Hear Me? And at the end of the day, again, opinion be opinion. As long as they're not, like, blatantly misrepresenting what people have said, I don't see the issue with it. Because, like, there are some people out there who will say, oh, it's just an opinion, as a means to cover up people's, like, being inaccurate. Like, obviously I can say, there is a person out there, and I probably know who it is, who went after Christopher Eccleston, saying that he was fired from the show, and that he, was fired from the show, and that he was a horrible person, all this, and that was, he was fired from the show. Even though he wasn't fired, he left because he didn't like where the show was going, so he left. So that was a blatant lie, and people said, oh, well, that's just his opinion. No, that's just a blatant misrepresentation of what actually happened to fit your own narrative. I personally liked the scene from Can You Hear Me, but I can see why people didn't like it. Exactly, that's a perfectly normal reaction to have. That's a perfectly normal response to that scene to have, to be like, yeah, I didn't like it, but I can see why people do. That's normal. Someone around the Tales of Wen Chiang. Wait, what was that? I think that's half a conversation I picked up there. Hang on, let me scroll up in the chat a bit. Wait, what was... I'll pick that back up in a bit. Bring back the Crispy Master. That'd be interesting. It'd be interesting to see that with, like, modern technology, I guess. Like, it'd be interesting to see that sort of translated over into a modern context. Like, yeah, that would be cool. Nicola Walker's Big Finish. Liv Chenko will be the next new Doctor. I think, if I had to guess what the next Doctor will be, I think they'll do another female. And the reason I do is because I don't think the BBC want it to look like they'd back down, so I think they will do another female Doctor. Either that or a male person of colour. But that shouldn't even matter, really, as long as the stories are good. My problem more is that Chibnall is staying, to be honest. With, like, I've said this before, if the actor's changed but Chibnall stays, it doesn't make too much difference to me, because I think he is the core issue, because, like, I just don't think his writing is the best suited to Doctor Who, personally. But again, if people enjoy it, that's fair enough. Bring back Eric Roberts. I will say I did like that trailer of him in, like, the Big Finish, and, like, him being the Master again. That was very cool. Speaking of Big Finish, we got a trailer for the Fifth Doctor and David Tennant crossover audio thing. And it was weird because the Invasion Cybermen had the Cybers voices, which, there's nothing in particular about that. I just thought that was interesting. Actually, the Cardiff crew were a bunch of assholes in 2005. Got worse in 2006. London had to kick them into touch, but we never hear about that. Wait, really? I didn't know that. Random side note, but when did you start up YouTube? Don't remember hearing your backstory anywhere. Okay, that's interesting. You want to hear about my backstory? That's alright. So I started YouTube in 2018. It was when Series 11 was airing, and I wasn't enjoying it. And I wanted, basically, to have somewhere where I could vent my frustrations about the era and Doctor Who into. So I started this. The videos were really primitive. I used to record by basically pausing a video on my phone for the screenshot and basically screen recording my phone screen, which would obviously pick up my voice as well. And those were very primitive videos. They're all deleted now. But I unfortunately fell into a bad crowd with the Not My Doctors. And I spent the better part of a year with them. And then obviously some drama went down with them, and I sort of left them. And then Series 12 came out. I saw a bit of momentum. And yeah, we just carried on until where we are today. And then the leak videos came along. And now I'm at this sort of, I guess, massive point now where I'm getting like hundreds of people I had 100 people watching me live. I had 104 people watching at the peak of this stream, which is bonkers to me. Absolutely insane. Especially for a channel of this size as well, I think is a real. I'm really thankful to you all for letting this happen. But yeah, there's my origin story for any of you who didn't know. New theory: Tharies is a timeless child. You became the very thing you swore to destroy, as they say in Star Wars. More modern Who, as we've only had the Masters in Series 3. I'm not sure what that's in reference to, but yeah, the Master has been in Doctor Who since Series 3. Everyone knows the one true Doctor is McCoy or maybe Trent. I do love McCoy. McCoy's great. He might be. I need to do a re-ranking of the Doctors at some point, but I think he might be like in my top few. Christine, hello Christine, how are you? Long time no see. Yeah, it's been a while. How you been? I've not been doing too bad. Maybe the maybe the Doctor will be revealed later this year before James Bond is revealed. But can you imagine the crossover they did? Oh, a Doctor Who James Bond crossover would be interesting. Like, I mean, it would be a bit, I don't know, it would have to be quite fan wanky, but I mean, it could be fun. I don't know. I'm not a big James Bond fan. I feel like it's interesting. I know, like, there's a sort of saying that you're either a James Bond fan or a Doctor Who fan, even though there are probably people who are fans of both. But yeah, I've heard that, like, saying thrown about a bit. Found 45 the other day, and it's so good. If nobody's heard the word Lord, do yourself a favour. Is that a Big Finish thing? Yeah, so that's what I used to do, is I had a screen recorder that picked up my voice, down to 23. Yeah, that's what I did. Yeah. Someone's just filling up their water. Over the years, they say they're going to bring back Omega, but they just don't. I think there is, I said this in a video before, I think there's a legal thing with Omega, because I think they've been wanting to start off a K9 spin-off for a while, and apparently K9 and Omega are owned by somebody else. I think that's part of the reason why Omega, like, there's a lot of difficulty with him officially coming back. So yeah, there you go. My best mates in the fandom like both. Yeah, so there are people who do like both. I just heard that as a saying that exists. Wait, so, Sorry, the chat's going so quick. It does sometimes overwhelm me how quick it goes. It's very cool though. The canine, yeah. So they've been trying to launch like a canine film for years. I think there's even like images of it, but it just never really happens. I don't really know who would watch a canine film without any connection to Doctor Who at all. It's kind of like when they did the Venom movie, but they can't really reference Spider-Man at all. I mean, they managed to carry it off okay, but it would obviously have been much better with the Theories should watch all the episodes of the Canine spin-off. Wait, the Canine and Company? No, I ain't doing Canine and Company. The only thing of Canine and Company I've watched is the intro. Toxic positivity, turkey tour. Hell yeah. I'm going to take my toxic positivity video to Turkey, and I'm going to play it to all the people there. And they're going to tell me what they think. Nice to see you in here, though, Cynical. I hope you did okay. Bob Baker will never get his K9 Omega film off the ground. They've been trying since 1992. Exactly. I just don't think... Would anyone really watch it? I feel like people... Yeah, they know who K9 is outside of Doctor Who. Because I know some people who used to say, oh, K9, that's the dog from Sarah Jane. So there are people who know K9 outside of Doctor Who, but, like, I don't think it's enough to launch a film off of. Could the canine dog be returned for Doctor Who Series 14? I don't really know the legality of the canine thing. I don't know like what they legally are allowed to use and what the ones they're legally not allowed to use. If anyone does know, feel free to let me know. I was supposed to be building a canine relaunch prop, even planned it, and ultimately it was a waste of time. Yeah, I've seen that you've built one for a fan, like a proper, what you call it? Yeah, I like a canine full size prop. I've always wanted a canine. I thought that would just be cool. But yeah, it's yeah, they never really did anything with canine. The closest we got was like that Australian show that came out, which was like the new one. But I don't really know what happened with that. I don't think it did very well. I'm fine, thanks. I'm heading off now. Just wanted to say that. Have a good day. Thank you, Cynical. Sarah Jane is gone for 10 years, but K9 will be back after the 14th Doctor revealed, like David Tennant. Maybe. I mean, K9's an interesting one, isn't he? Because he is very much baked into the nostalgia of the show. I feel like because he was with the 4th Doctor, and like I think a lot of people still associate the 4th Doctor with Doctor Who. It's either the 4th Doctor or the 10th Doctor. He is kind of considered a big part of Doctor Who. Like the Daleks, the character, the writer of the character, the BBC owns the design. Okay, so that's why in the movie they can't use the current design. Although, but in the Australian show, they used the original design for like the first scene before it gets like blown up or something. So yeah, but yeah, with the Daleks, it's the same. The BBC should have really been more careful about how they did copyright stuff back in the day. Because, you know, it led to them... I guess they didn't know how successful the Daleks would have been, but especially, like, with K9, if he was deliberately designed to, you know, be appealing to kids, maybe, you know, get the rights a bit tighter on that. I don't know. Remember in the 2000s K9 show, when K9 escaped the time? I don't remember that. If someone can send me, like, a link in, like, Discord or something to that, I don't remember that. I must be the only person who didn't like Casino Royale. I'm guessing this is a James Bond thing. That could literally mean anything to me. Funny how David Tennant has so many adventures over all these media, and his Doctor has only lived for like 3 years. Yeah, it's bizarre, isn't it? Like with 4, he lived for so long. You know, it makes sense that he has all these adventures. With like 10, it's always weird to me when like they have like the RTD Doctors with so many more adventures outside of their TV runs, because I feel like those Doctors in particular have such a complete life on screen that the idea of them having just like a billion other adventures that we don't see, I mean, obviously there is going to be downtime in between, but I find it interesting when, like, you know, it's harder with certain Doctors, I think, because, you know, they've got very specific character arcs, and you don't want it to contradict those character arcs, if that makes sense. K9 wasn't supposed to be a regular companion. He was originally just going to be in the Invisible Enemy. Oh, really? I didn't know that. What do you think of Out of Time 2? I'm guessing that's the one with Peter Davison and David Tennant. Haven't listened to it yet. Heard the trailer. I do find it weird that the Invasion Cybermen are having the Cybers voices, but you know, I guess because like that's the one that Nicholas Briggs is most comfortable with. It wasn't so much copyright, more to do with staff writers and freelance writers. Staff as characters were owned by the BBC. Freelancers get to keep their copyright on their characters. Okay, interesting. That's interesting. I didn't know. I haven't seen Downtime, but I do. I think I do want to talk one day about like all of the weird Doctor Who spin-off stuff. So you know, your Downtimes, the Zygon film, the weird Cyberman one that aren't Cybermen. I definitely want to cover one of them at some point. The BBB stuff. Yeah, I'd be down to cover that at some point. For sure. Oh. Taking a drink. Gotta stay hydrated, kids. Wait, what did Nathan Mann say? I'll take a look at what Nathan Mann said. Being a fan of Marvel's animation department pre-MCU, very much agree. I'm not sure what this is in reference to. But like that's the thing with them. The one part that's kind of been bad about the Marvel MCU Disney acquisition is that like the cartoons are much better pre the acquisition of Marvel via Disney, I think. Like, because you got like Spectacular Spider-Man, you had the old Avengers show, which was a lot better. Yeah, so I definitely agree that the shows were a lot better pre Disney acquisition. Really hope Out of Time evolves into just random Doctors crossing over. I really want 9 and 3, and as you said, 7 and 9. 7 and 9 I think would be such an interesting one, because they're close together, but obviously there's a big gap between them, and obviously the Time War. But also, I think they're some of the most starkly different, because I think with 7, you get this sense that he takes his status in the universe very seriously, whereas the Ninth Doctor is a Doctor who's lost all his status by this point. So it'd be really interesting to see how they would interact, I think. I will say as well, if you by any chance do want to super chat, if you have been enjoying the stream, feel free to. It's not an obligation, but you can. I haven't mentioned it all stream because honestly I forgot. I probably should have mentioned it when we had some more viewers in, but if you do want to super chat, feel free. Really hope Out of Time, yeah, no, I read that already. The Zygon films were class. Yeah, I mean, I've seen reviews of them, they look pretty funny. But yeah. I do wish minisodes would return between seasons. Yeah, I'd be down for that. I think that's the thing. I think that's what makes the droughts feel so empty in the Chibnall era, is that we don't just get like anything small in between, really. Like, it has to be it's just the main series, and then obviously I know we get Big Finish, but in terms of like the main show stuff, we just get the main show at one point in the year. That's it. Like, radio silence for the rest. They don't really obviously I know they do appear in like Comic Relief and Children in Need, but they're so fleeting and small, and they're not really any like, we used to get like full on minisodes back in the day, and we just don't get that anymore. And I think little things like that really do help with people appreciating the show more and remembering it. Oh, you monetized. Congratulations. Yeah, I've been monetized for a little while. Thank you, though, Christine Venner, for the £5. Really appreciate that. Much appreciated. Yeah, I am monetized. Yeah, no, it's been really fun. Like, when did I get monetized? When was it? It must have been a little while ago now. But to be fair, like, these days are when it's properly, I guess, been meaning something, because obviously I can't tell you exactly like what I'm it's not a lot, but this sort of couple of months is the first time I'm going to be paid by YouTube consecutively over a bit, like, so I'll be paid this month and next month, whereas before I'll be paid 1 month and then I'll have to like save up like 3 months before I could get my next thing, because the way YouTube monetization works is that they won't pay out until you've reached £60. That's what they do to pay you out, because then that way they're not having to constantly pay out money. So yeah, basically, I've had times where I've been paid once, and then because I've had a few flop months, I won't be paid for like a few more months after that. But little super chats and things like that really help. Wait, someone said earlier, so I got a bit distracted by the super chat, but thank you. Which fandom do you think is the worst? Honestly, the Doctor Who fandom. Like, that was kind of the original point of this stream, was to highlight the issues with this fandom, and I do think it's got a lot of issues. But yeah, no, I think it's this one. I think it can be better, though. That's the thing. I know it can be better because I've seen it be better. And I guess that's what the most frustrating part about it is that when you know a fan base can be better, and yet it's still not, I think that's just what's more depressing about the fan base at the minute. But I really like the community we've got here, because we've all got a myriad of different opinions, yet we all sort of get along, and I really like that about this community. Obviously, there are some people who just try and spoil it for everyone, but that's the case with any YouTuber ever. So, what if an anniversary story is included with lots of different team ups, with different doctors and companions working towards an overarching story towards the series? That'd be cool. I heard someone propose the idea the other day that for the 60th, what they should do for the 60th year, have a story with each different doctor leading into the 60th, which I think would be really cool. Oh yeah, thumbnail picture. I'm guessing that's in reference to like the thumbnail competition. I'll be doing those again when the next leak comes around. When I do the next leak video, I'll be putting more of those in. Indeed, NMDs and Jodie fans kind of ruined most of it. Yeah, it's not even just that. They're like, obviously those are the two big ones, but like even just smaller things, I think everyone's just become very defensive and hostile and sort of elitist, and it's kind of just a bit naff. What do you think about the DC fandom? Oh, that's an interesting one. Obviously, I have plenty of friends who are in the DC fandom. I have a lot of people who enjoy those films. I'm personally not a big Snyder fan. Personally, just for me, like, obviously I'm glad he got to see his original vision, but at the end of the day, I never really liked his original vision in the first place, so seeing a 4-hour version of it was never really going to do it for me, but that's just me personally. But I'm happy that he got to do it, and I'm happy that people are enjoying it. I do think that they're going a bit far now, like with spamming Restore the Snyderverse everywhere, because, yeah, I do think there's a fine line to walk with, like, fan bases, where if you give in to everything that they want, I do think it increases that sense of entitlement. And I'm not saying that everyone in like the DC fandom is entitled or anything. More so just, you've got to be careful about what you give into and what you don't really. I don't know. I guess just it's a fine line to walk. The DC fandom is more tangled than River Song's timeline. Yeah. I guess the thing I like about the DC fanbase is, because they have so many different films and projects, I feel like, if you don't like one part, they're okay with it, and they let you, like, just enjoy the other bits, which I think the Doctor Who fandom could really take a note from. But I'm going to head off, but thank you all. See you, S&T Rules, but I'm going to head off. Thank you all for coming, and I will see you later. Goodbye.